Hi, I'm Paul,
And I'm Bucky.
and we're here from Paul and Bucky's Skills for Life. And today we are talking about a very important topic. We're talking about verbal defense, or I like to call it verbal Aikido. So, the idea behind verbal Aikido is how to deal with difficult situations and when you might be into an argument with people. Now, if you've watched the news lately, you see often it's clips of two people kind of shouting back and forth at each other. Um, and we know that while that might work for TV ratings, that really doesn't work in real life. So what we wanted to do is try to show you some ways that you might actually enter into a conflict with someone and be able to come out in a positive, productive way. And it's going to build on some of the skills we've already talked about, like active listening. So I'd like to start in thinking about what's it like your conflict in your body. So, meaning that when we start in conflict, usually we immediately start to go into fight or flight mode. So our heart rate starts to increase, our pupils dilate, and we take in everything. And our more emotional brain starts to become much more active and looking for threats. So what we want to do, and that's helpful if we're being chased by a bear, probably, but not so helpful when we're having an interaction with a fellow human being, especially one that we like and want to maintain a good relationship. So the first thing that we got to do is we really got to calm down our bodies. And I like the idea of a martial art as a comparison, because just like martial arts, it takes training in order to do this effectively. It's not something like if I were to take a 1 day class in martial arts and then go out and challenge a black belt, I probably wouldn't do very well. And so the same thing is here. You want to practice some of these skills, and the better you get at them, then the more effective that they're going to be for you. So the first thing to think about is mindfulness. So mindfulness is really about being in the present moment. It's not thinking about the future or not thinking about the past. And when we're mindful of our feelings, we learn to recognize that we are not our feelings. We may have feelings, but there's also a part of us that can sort of look at that feeling from an objective standpoint and have some thoughts about that. And that really requires our logical brain to help out. So in order for our logical brain to have any power when we're in a conflict situation, we've got to learn to calm our body down and start to calm down that fight or flight system. So we do that by breathing, maybe taking a few deep breaths, taking a moment to do a body scan and see, like, if I'm in a conflict, sometimes for me, my shoulders get really tight and I feel my muscles clench. So I might just kind of let those muscles go a little bit. And just take a moment, and this can happen really quick, and you don't really have to take a long time to do this, but just focus on your breath, recognize and just say, okay, I'm feeling kind of angry or I'm feeling attacked right now. That's okay. And just get your body to relax. And this is where the more practice you do in this, the more you're going to be able to stay calm in a situation. And then just remain open and curious. So we talked about feedback earlier, and we said that feedback is often someone sharing their perspective of you. It doesn't necessarily mean it is accurate. It's just that's you through their perception and their lens. So if they're giving you some feedback, and sometimes people don't always give us feedback in the most positive ways, so it's easy for us to feel defensive and attacked. So we want to try to look at what's the actual feelings behind their feedback. So if someone comes up to me and says, you know what, Paul, you're a real jerk. You blew me off yesterday. I'm gonna in my brain, I'm gonna reword that and say, okay, they're angry at me, and I want to know how they felt and why. So rather than say, well, I had something really important come up, I'm gonna say, oh wow, you seem really angry. Why don't you tell me about that? To kind of get them talking and to help them get past the fact that maybe they're not saying the words in the right way, but I understand that they're feeling probably hurt or angry at something that they perceive that I did. Okay, so now Bucky's going to talk a little bit about how active listening plays an important role in this.
Thank you, Paul. Something you said reminded me. I just read a book recently called Breathe by James Nestor. Check it out. But it's all about nose breathing. So, which is supposedly more effective than mouth breathing. So I always catch myself trying to practice breathing through my nose. Anyways, but just a way of, the reason I bring that up is just a way to get yourself into a calm area, calmness in yourself, because it can be a very stressful situation when someone is attacking you verbally. So like Paul said, we really want to try to understand their perspective of where they're coming from. And so we're going to go back to our active listening skills. And if you want to go back and review that, that would be great, that video that we made about active listening. But you want to start by asking open-ended questions. So, for example, I'm feeling that you're angry with me, and what's going on? So, trying to find out more from them, getting more details about what they are angry about. You could say something like, I'm bummed that you were hurt in this situation. Can you tell me more about how you perceived what happened? So again, you're trying to get them to clarify more of what's going on, where are they coming from? And once you begin to get that understanding of what they're saying, you want to reflect back. So I'm going to use a situation where this may be common among teens. They may be going somewhere and their parents expect them to text them when they arrive safely at that place that they're going. So I might say, if the parent is upset with me, so you feel it's irresponsible of me not to text you when I arrive safely at my destination. So that way, the person who is angry or upset with you really gets the feeling that they're being heard and understood. So reflecting back what you hear is really important, so you can make sure that you really understand what they're saying. Also, too, you want to, sometimes we have assumptions. We assume certain things about people or where they're coming from. And sometimes those assumptions can get in the way of us doing this active listening. So it's really important to try to take those assumptions and sort of put them in the back of your head or put them away somewhere, because those can get in the way. So things like in this situation where the person didn't text, I might, as a teen, make the assumption, well, I told you where I was going. Wouldn't you just assume that I would be all set and I wouldn't need to text you? So, again, trying to be able to deal with those assumptions and not let them enter the conversation. You also want to ignore any attacks. And again, this comes back to remaining calm. And, if the person is being verbally aggressive, if you meet that person with aggression back, then you're getting into that situation where you're getting into that conflict cycle where emotions are getting elevated. And obviously when our emotions get elevated, our thinking goes down, and that doesn't help our situations. So you really want to try to ignore those attacks. And finally, just staying present, being in the moment. We talked about the mindfulness, sort of letting go of maybe your past relationships with this person or your future hopes with this person, and really just focusing on the moment. So those are some things that you really need to keep in mind when you're doing this verbal Aikido. So Paul's going to talk a little bit more about responding to the person who is upset. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Bucky. And when we talk about responding, I want to say avoiding defensiveness. And one of the things that I noticed as Bucky, you were talking, when you're reflecting back and saying things like, you know, I understand you feel like I was irresponsible by not calling you back. And that's really, I'm just reflecting, and that's all about them. So right now, I'm not even making it about myself. I'm just hearing them out and reflecting on what they said and kind of letting them get out their frustration. And by not getting defensive, there's a couple of things that you can do. You don't have to take responsibility for someone else's feelings, so I don't have to apologize unless I feel like I've done something where I do need to apologize. So you can say, by reflecting back, let's say in the parent situation, parents might make assumptions too, like, you know, maybe my cell phone battery died and I forget to recharge it, and maybe they think I just blew them off when really my battery died. So they don't know that, and they might be making an assumption. So before I jump in and try to clarify, I just kind of hear what they have to say. And then I avoid defensiveness. So I don't try to defend myself. And the first part of this is you really, sometimes when we get hit, I call it being hit by something verbally. When we feel defensive, sometimes that's because we have a negative belief about ourselves that connects to. If someone said, Paul, you're a terrible pilot, like the way you fly fighter jets is terrible. Now, I'm not going to take that personally because I'm not a pilot. I don't know how to fly a fighter jet. I've never thought about flying a fighter jet in my life. So it doesn't really bother me. If someone says, Paul, you're a jerk, now sometimes there's a fear. I don't like to be a jerk. So when someone calls me a jerk, then suddenly it connects to my own worries about being a jerk. So first, I really kind of have to make some peace with myself and say, you know what, I'm a good person and I make mistakes, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world if, you know, we're all going to do things sometimes without even meaning to that are going to hurt someone's feelings, or they might perceive that we did something that we didn't. So it's just a normal part of life. So the way we work through that is by working through it. And by being defensive, it can actually make it worse. So just remember, you're a good, caring person, and you don't want to hurt somebody, and you can't avoid it. So the best thing you can do is try to work it out when it happens. So really work on not being defensive and recognizing when, you know, they're connecting to our own inner insecurities that we might feel like we have to defend ourselves against, and we don't. We're okay. And it's okay to say, hey, you know, I probably could have done that differently. And you know what? That's okay. That doesn't mean I'm a horrible person because I maybe wasn't thoughtful in that moment, or I didn't think of something that I wish I had. So clarifying your perspective and feelings. So again, owning your feelings and your perspective. Like Bucky mentioned earlier, we want to check our assumptions, but sometimes it's okay to check your assumption out just by saying, like, hey, my assumption is that you thought that I blew you off. Is that correct? And if they say, yeah, I felt blown off, say, okay, well, I'd just like to clarify if I could. In that moment, my battery died, and there was no charger around, so I really wanted to call you, but I couldn't, and I felt badly in that moment, but I really didn't mean for you to feel bad, but I didn't have a way to call you. So I'm checking their assumption, and it may or may not be true, my assumption, and then I'm able to clarify with them. And then using I statements and owning how you feel is really important. So if I say, you know, I'm feeling attacked right now, that's a lot different than if I say, hey, you're attacking me and you're being a jerk. If I say, you know, right now I'm feeling a little attacked and I'm feeling a little defensive, then that allows me to name my feelings and I'm owning those. I'm not saying that they are attacking me. I'm saying that I am feeling attacked. And that just lets them know where I'm at, but I'm not putting it on them. I'm owning my own feelings. So to clarify how I feel, and using those I statements for my perspective. And then Bucky, you're going to talk a little bit about joining.
Yes, I am, Paul. And another excellent the pilot metaphor there was really an interesting one. But
thank you.
anyways, so I think there's a joining. When we're talking about joining, we're trying to sort of bring this conversation together. And so if you think about that as you've been reflecting your understanding of what the other person is saying, and also being able to express your position as well. So it's not just a one-way street. You are also explaining, your position as well. But again, we want to explain our position using those I statements, because that way the ownership is on us and not necessarily like, well, you did this and you did that. So really important to keep expressing how it affected you, and because no one can take away your perspective or your feelings. If there's anything that needs clarifying, we've talked about clarifying, getting clarification of the other person's perspective, but also make sure you may want to ask, do you have questions about where I'm coming from? So asking, making sure that we have that clarification is important. And so we're going to lead to sort of what would they like to see as an outcome, and what would you like to see as an outcome? And so those, it's time to sort of bring that conversation, now that you've gone with this back and forth, to what are we going to do moving forward? So sharing those wishes or those outcomes are really important. So again, you want to ask the person what they would see as an outcome and what you would see as an outcome. So, and I always want to just say that, and you could always interject this earlier too, is like, I really want to try to understand you, and maybe we can work together to come out with an outcome that's going to be beneficial to both of us. So I think it's important to hold that out there. And Paul, you want to do some problem solving?
Yes. The first point I'd like to make is this process is not about being right or wrong. So if you are coming at this and a lot of times this is what we do, we go into an argument saying, I want to win. Like, I have to convince them that my view is the right view, and they're going to try and convince me that their view is the right view, and we both lose. So the idea is that we get our needs met in the best of the way that we can, and we communicate what we need to each other and where we're coming from, and then we try to join. Conflict can be something that's really breaks apart a relationship, or it can strengthen and bring a relationship together. And things that, like talking about our feelings and really understanding and having empathy for each other, is when it brings our relationships closer together and makes us stronger. It's when we feel like we're being attacked or digging at each other and we walk away feeling more disconnected, that's not really an effective way to manage conflict. So problem solving is, first I want to talk a little bit about assertiveness. So sometimes people have expectations of us that we may or may not be able to meet, or we may or may not want to meet. And so let's say someone wants me to go out somewhere with them and I don't have time. And I might have to say to them, I care about you and I really do enjoy hanging out with you. I cannot do it. I know it's important for you, and that's disappointing. Sounds like that's disappointing for you, and I just can't do that this time. And then that's when negotiating comes into play. So perhaps we could do that at another time. What's something that works for both of us? And maybe there's some compromising that I can make. Maybe we could hang out later that day. or, maybe we could talk on the phone for a few minutes just to hang out, and then I can do the thing that I need to do, and we can go to that movie another time. So it's when we really have empathy for each other, we recognize that we both have needs, and sometimes we can't meet those needs. And it's not okay for you, if you can't meet someone's needs, to just say you will anyway, to sort of avoid the conflict, because that leaves you walking away feeling unresolved from the conflict. The other person might think, oh, we're good, he's decided he can do it. And then I'm walking away feeling like, oh, I'm being taken advantage of, and that doesn't work for me, but at least we're not in a conflict. But then when I see that person, then it's still sort of stuck in there for me. So it's really respectful of myself to be honest and to be upfront. And it may put us in conflict, but to say what I need. And the other person has the right to do that. And anyone can ask us for something, for help, but that doesn't mean we're always able or willing to give it. So, and that's where negotiating comes in. Maybe we can do this together, but I can't do that. And you also don't really always have to explain yourself. Sometimes it can just be, you know what, I'm just not in a space to do that right now. And that's okay too. So if you can get to a good compromise and decide like on sort of a plan, then you kind of check in and just sort of later on see how things are going. Did it work out? Hey, we had that talk last week. Just wanted to make sure, we kind of compromised how that's going and feel okay about that. And then feel like, you can just kind of check in to make sure things are still going well. And you're able to stay on a good footing.
Yeah, I also just want to add that sometimes you go through this process and you can't come to a compromise, or there isn't necessarily something that's going to work out for both of you. And that's okay. I just think that you've now built a better relationship with that person, which is definitely going to have more payoffs for you and that person in the long run, instead of the emotionally charged I'm right, you're wrong type argument. So even if you don't get to that place where you really feel like you should be as far as a reasonable compromise, it's okay. I think you've gone through a process where you have made a connection with that person, and so that's going to benefit you, and it makes you feel good, I think, even though you might walk away with not exactly what you wanted, but you've strengthen that relationship with that person. So the next time you go back, it's a stronger bond. So definitely the process, I feel is worthwhile.
Yes. And if things that really damage the relationship are criticizing each other, making value judgments about the other person, and not really listening to each other, those are things that will damage the relationship and not bring the conflict to a good place. And things like guilt and things like that don't really necessarily, we can feel bad if we've done something that hurt someone, and we can, try to make amends for that. And then, we have to be gracious if someone tries to make amends. We have to sort of let that go. So just remember, if you're both talking at the same time, you're not getting anywhere. And just like those, when you see every day on CNN, those two people that are shouting at each other and no one really can hear what's going on, that's not communication. That's more for entertainment news purposes, but it doesn't actually help to solve anything. So if you find yourself talking at the same time, it's time for someone to take a deep breath, recognize your feelings, and then to listen, and then you'll get a chance to talk later. And just like in active listening, we listen not to figure out when we can jump in and say what we want to say, but to actually try to understand. So thank you. We wish you great luck in working through your conflicts. And like I said, practice this. take some time to put yourself in a situation or think about a situation you had and how some of these skills and techniques might have helped this go a little bit better for you. And we wish you the best, and feel free to leave any comments or questions below. And if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. We'd love for you to subscribe if you're enjoying learning some of these skills, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.